Blessings, beloveds. Welcome back, Anastasia, Cosmic Astrologer. Thank you so much for taking the time to tune in and listen to just some considerations about the new moon in Leo. So this is Goddess Lakshmi on my screen. Many of you will know who this is. Such a beautiful divine goddess. Okay, let's go straight to the chart. My beautiful little sweetheart Coco is very vocal tonight, so you may hear her in the background. Hopefully that's not too distracting. But the moon is in Leo and she's from the cat family, so that's quite appropriate. Okay, so here's the chart. I'm sorry for getting this out quite late as well. Just various reasons I couldn't sit down to record, and I'm actually doing this quite late at night when I should be sleeping anyway. So hopefully it's it's not too late for you guys to receive these messages. The new moon is always, of course, a new cycle that we are stepping into, which will basically speak to certain undertones and themes for the next month, essentially. It's always important to locate the position of the new moon in your own birth chart. So which house is it in? And is it aspecting, particularly by conjunction or opposition, any planets in your own chart? And of course, for those of you that are born around about the 19th of August, this new moon is even more important. Doesn't matter what year, just the fact that you were born around the 19th of August, this new moon could be just more prominent, more significant for you, and it would show up in your solar return chart as well. So it sets the tone for the next 4 weeks. You can see here, this chart has been casted for Melbourne, Australia, so don't worry about the location of everything as always, unless of course you live in Melbourne. However, we are wanting to understand this new moon relative to your own birth chart. Okay, so this is just the chart for where everything is at the exact moment of the new moon in Australia. The house location is super, super important. There's 3 distinct layers, right? Or 3 possible distinct layers, 2 absolute layers. So the first layer is, of course, it's a new moon and it's in the sign of Leo. So naturally, we are focusing on a point in the archetypes, in the zodiacal position of things where the new moon is going to be created in the sign of Leo, the archetype of Leo. And Leo it's such a fascinating sign in a lot of ways, but it is a personal sign. Just remember that the signs from Aries through to Leo, so the first 5 signs of the zodiac, are incredibly personal. And that personal factor is very rich, actually, in terms of the creative force and energy behind those early signs of the zodiac. And I have done a video on this some time ago, just speaking about the nature of creativity in people's lives. So people who are extremely creative usually have the early signs of the zodiac quite prominent in their charts, because the early signs, because they are so personal, so focused on the self, there's a tremendous intensified pouring of energy that comes through the person, that it's just so focused on that particular expression, on that particular creative process. Whereas, to draw a contrast, when you start going into the later signs of the zodiac, which just have a lot more objectivity and awareness, they are the signs that start to take us out into more cultural, collective, societal types of matters, concerns and issues, and growth and perspectives and so forth. But the first 5 signs are always to do with the self, and it's the self manifesting, taking form, taking shape, which begins at Aries, of course, which is the birth of the self, right? So when we get to Leo, there's this incredible development of the person, the personality. And so that it's kind of interesting because before Leo is the sign Cancer, right? So Cancer is the first water sign, which is the first encounter with the emotional body, with emotional responses and reactions. It's the baby of the water signs. Now, Leo coming, just after Cancer kind of carries through part of that Cancerian insecurity. So Leo is really looking to feel a sense of confidence and security within itself through its development of personality. It doesn't mean necessarily that it's actually achieved it. It's a journey. And, according to Joseph Campbell, who's just an incredible soul on this planet, who's contributed so much to the archetypes and mythology, and he's written a lot of material on what's known as the hero's journey. And certainly Leo fits that description. Leo is the hero's journey. It's always about trying to actualize oneself to your fullest capability, to your fullest expression of who you are. A lot of that gets magnified or projected onto the father, of course, but that's another story. But Leo always brings up that that energy or that matter or that experience or that seeking or searching of the hero, and that can be, the hero within us or the hero that we project onto our father or other male figures in our lives, and especially if we're talking about women. So Leo is, even from esoteric levels in esoteric astrology, Leo is ruled by the sun, okay, just as it is in exoteric astrology, so the rulership there doesn't change. But when we kind of work with the energy of Leo esoterically, it's really about bringing in or activating self-awareness in order to bring forth this pure stream of creative force and energy that comes from divine source creation to all things, that comes from consciousness. And the reason that we do that if we are working spiritually and in more advanced ways with our consciousness, we are bringing forth our creative energy and creative purposes, not just for our own self-gratification, which is the personality side of Leo, but we are bringing it forth in order to inspire humanity, to inspire greater causes, which is the opposite, right? Aquarius. Leo is opposite to Aquarius. So when we're working with this energy esoterically, we really bring in that dimension of Aquarius as well, bringing forth our pure creative forces and juice to create something that will inspire humanity, that will inspire groups or communities and people around us. So we bring forth this creative energy, which also comes through the heart center, of course, because Leo rules the heart, but also through ray number 2, because in esoteric astrology, ray number 2 is ruled by the Sun and Jupiter. They are the 2 planets that correlate to ray number 2. And ray number 2 is basically love, wisdom. So that glorious solar force, light, energy is radiating and bringing forth this heart-centered love from an esoteric level relative to ray number 2, which is about including. It's about bringing forth unconditional love, actually. So that's just a little bit of some esoteric thinking around the new moon in Leo. Um, Also, it's to create opportunities for the expression of consciousness, both individually and collectively. And again, that refers to what I was explaining a moment ago when I said that the purpose of Leo's creativity from an esoteric level is to inspire a larger cause. Okay, so wherever the new moon lands in your birth chart, meaning whichever house it corresponds to relative to where the sign Leo is in your birth chart, then it is that particular house where something new can begin clearly, especially if you are the sort of person that works with new moon energy through rituals and practices, setting intentions, um, practicing certain meditations, all those sorts of things are very, very effective during a new moon. And depending on the nature of the house, each house symbolizes different aspects of life, right? So it is always important to integrate the new moon energy relative to the house of your own birth chart that it will be situated in. So one point is, well, there's several points. One point is new moon, which is a new beginning, new intentions. The second point is the Leo archetype, which correlates to pure creative force and energy, also unconditional love, and also the heart center, activating this creative force in order to inspire, a greater cause, right? And then, of course, it's the house location that it's in. That adds a whole other dimension where this energy can be activated. And then finally, the other element that needs to be considered is, does this new moon form a conjunction to any planets in your chart? So you might have, a moon in Leo, Mercury in Leo, a sun in Leo, a Venus in Leo, whatever planet it is. Obviously, that new moon is activating the energy of that Leo planet in your chart for the next 4 weeks. So that should help you understand, unpack that further relative to how this can transpire or what it can manifest for you, right? Now, the sun in Leo is in rulership, right? As we know, we're approaching sort of the end of the Leo season. And here we have this, glorious new moon in Leo, just as the sun is getting ready to say goodbye to Leo and enter Virgo, where we will enter the Virgo season. He's offering a little gift, if you like, or an opportunity just before he leaves his journey through the hero's kind of journey, if you like. So he brings forth with the moon. So the lunar goddess, the solar god, if you like, they come together in the sign of Leo to bring forth this creative opportunity, right? Now, Leo rules the sun, so Leo is at his most glorious, powerful position, if you like. And Leo is often associated with, with regal type of energy, rulership, kingship, leadership, all those sorts of things, right? And we do have, a lot of different things going on in the world collectively in virtually every country, really, and it's obviously different in each country relative to matters of government system, injustices. Then of course we have the whole COVID-19 pandemic situation. There's so many layers going on, and we are all, I think, trying our best to work within the confines of what's being presented to us. And it's largely being activated at the moment with Mars in Aries. If you look at Mars in Aries down here, Mars is forming a square to Saturn. So in this new moon, what we really have going is that we have an exact inconjunct aspect from Saturn to the sun and the moon. So Saturn is quincunx the new moon, in other words. And Mars is forming a square to the Saturn-Pluto midpoint, to be quite precise, technically speaking. So anyway, it's squaring Saturn and Pluto, but it's also forming a trine to this new moon. So we have, it's quite interesting, you know, we have Saturn in Capricorn, which is in rulership. We have Mars in Aries, which is in rulership, and we have the Sun in Leo, which is in rulership. So when planets are dignified in such a way, it doesn't necessarily always mean that what is going to be produced is always extremely positive necessarily, or just completely fantastic and completely great. There is a particular energy that comes through a planet when it's in rulership, when he's in his own sign. It's when a planet is in his own sign, it's like the king in his own castle. So he directs and controls and pretty much says what's going to happen, right? But you know, the flip side to that coin would be that Mars in Aries, whilst it's extremely powerful because it's dignified, it rules the sign Aries, and it's absolutely phenomenal when it comes to speed, energy, strength. You know, so if you're talking about the physical body, stamina, sports, athleticism, things like that, Mars in Aries would be the what's it called? People who run in you know, short distance type of athletic situations. You know, fast, really fast-paced runners. There was a famous runner in the Olympics. Just forgotten his name, but he had this nickname that was just so fitting for Mars in Aries. They called him the Bolt, or look, I'm sorry, I've just forgotten. But anyway, it was just so fitting for him, and he actually had a Mars in Aries, or he still does. So anyway, Mars in Aries, in other words, excels when it comes to these physical strengths, right? That can be expressed in a number of different ways physically, right? So there's a lot of power expressed through that, right? Which can be used for purposes that are positive in that way. The point I'm making, though, is that Mars in Aries, it's such a heated place for Mars. In the wrong hands, it's extremely dangerous. Now, it's actually quite fortunate that Mars is forming a trine to this new moon, because the trine aspect always has the ability to soften the energy, you know, between any two planets or more that are receiving each other through a trine. So they're acting together in a supportive way, as opposed to a tense way or a polarized way. Tense would be seen through a square, and a polarized way would be seen through an opposition. Now, trine's completely different, because it's like water, it just flows. It's supportive, right? So this trine from Mars is a really nice activation for this new moon, relative to all of us feeling a sense of inspiration, a sense of feeling perhaps more energized, more driven, more focused, right, relative to the new moon. So let's just create a scenario. Let's just say that you had this new moon falling in your fifth house, just to make a very simple example. That would clearly be speaking to matters of your own personal creativity and personal self-expression. So one thing to understand about Leo and the fifth house, it doesn't necessarily always follow that if you have strong Leo in your chart, or if you have a strong fifth house, that you need to be an artist of some kind. The word artist covers many different streams of artistic abilities, right? The point to the fifth house and to Leo is it basically shows you, how does this person radiate their light? How do they truly express themselves? I mean, quite simply, that's what it is. It's the total activation of self-actualization in self-expression. And that, for certain people, takes the form of creative endeavors. Not necessarily for everyone, though. So it doesn't have to be, some artistic thing, painting, singing, dancing, or whatever. It can be, but it doesn't have to be. Leo is purely about expressing yourself, right? So if this new moon was landing in your fifth house, and it could relate to children. If you have children, it can connect to matters of the lives of your children, relative to perhaps certain activities they're engaged in, or things you're wanting to create with them, or things you're helping them with along the way. There's so many different possibilities. It can also connect to love affairs, so a love affair always starts in the fifth house. And if it evolves into a relationship, it goes into the seventh. And if it evolves into something a lot more deeper, relative to sharing, going into the sphere of shared resources, sexually, spiritually, emotionally, physically, and so forth, then that relationship takes you into the eighth house, right? But a love affair is the fifth house, okay? That's where it begins. And it doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to just naturally go to the seventh house. Sometimes people just have, a 1 month love affair, and that's it, and it ends there. And that's a fifth house experience, in other words. So the new moon in the fifth house could bring up a matter like that to you. It could bring up matters relative to children, if you have them. It could bring up matters of giving birth to a child. I wouldn't necessarily say that a new moon in Leo in the fifth house means you're going to give birth. There would need to be other indicators in the chart pointing to that as well. But if that new moon in Leo in the fifth house, in addition to a number of other different things going on relative to childbirth, then that would be wonderful symbolism for that, obviously. And then finally, the fifth house would be your own personal, again, creative expression and your personal creativity. Now, there's different types of creativity as well, so if you had strong Virgo in your chart and you were a creative person, then that can show up very strongly in the world of crafts. So when you think about the world of crafts, different sorts of crafts that can be, aesthetically pleasing or more practical, that's a Virgo type of creativity, for instance. But when you think about singing and dancing and acting and being on stage, that's more of a fifth house level of creativity. So there's different types of creativity, right? So just pay attention to where the new moon is, because this is a really invigorating type of energy, specifically because Mars is in Aries, forming a trine to this new moon. So it's really supportive in terms of giving you that extra burst of energy and confidence, right? Because Mars in Aries is very, very confident, as is the Sun in Leo. There's a lot of confident energy running through this. And again, in the wrong hands, when I say wrong, which I don't really like to use the terms right or wrong, but sometimes I forget and it just sort of comes out. But in the hands of a more unconscious individual, that would be a better way to say it. Those types of energies can be, Mars in Aries can be extremely dangerous, because it's very quick to act with violence and aggression, without any reflection or consideration, of course. It's extremely impulsive, right? And of course, the Sun in Leo, when that's operating in very unconscious hands at the pure personality level, that's just that can be, total selfishness and complete narcissism, or just totally egotistical and completely couldn't give a shit about anybody else, about the bigger sort of consequences, if you like, of certain actions and so forth. It's the inability to draw in the polarity Aquarius, which is the greater vision, the greater understanding, the greater perspective of humanity at large, right? So, these are things that are important to consider. The inconjunct from Saturn is going to be this: if you have already started some creative journey, this new moon will be very helpful in activating this further, in supporting this journey further, in making it more energized, if you like. But the point to consider very carefully is the inconjunct from Saturn is going to suggest that you may have to rethink part of the process, or you may have to rethink the whole journey. There will need to be some kind of rethinking, reshuffling, or readjusting relative to some creative project that you have begun, or that you have been thinking about and are ready to embark on now. So what you how you had it laid out in your mind or on a piece of paper, or however you do that, this new moon is saying that absolutely embark on some kind of creative purpose or journey or expression, which could be, a new love that's just come into your life as well, because we're talking about the matter of the heart here, Leo, right? And Leo is the sign of romance. That's why the fifth house correlates to love affairs. So whatever the case, whether it's a new love affair, whether it's matters connecting to your children, or whether it's matters connecting to some very specific creative project that you have in mind for yourself, just understand that this inconjunct or quincunx from Saturn is saying that as this unfolds over the next 4 weeks, you will have to adjust your thinking, adjust your position in some kind of way relative to what you thought about the process, or what you thought about a particular person, for instance. There's going to be some kind of necessary adjustment, and it's not, you can't avoid it. It will just come up. You will see it. So that's just another point to consider. Also, because Mars is forming a square to this Saturn, and so it's part of this new moon energy. It's trine the new moon, it's square Saturn. So that dimension of the square, Mars and Saturn, is always about, it's kind of like one foot on the brake, one foot on the accelerator. That's a very good metaphor for a Mars-Saturn square aspect, right? Or conjunction or opposition for that matter, actually. So how does that translate? That translates to, there's a very strong desire, because Mars rules our desires, right? Very strong desire to push forward in a particular direction, Mars in Aries. But the square to Saturn, now remember, this is the undertone for the next 4 weeks relative to this new moon. The square from Saturn is saying, well, you absolutely do need to go ahead, Mars in Aries, pursue your desires, but you're going to have to do it with a level of caution, Saturn. And there might be some frustration if you just try to push ahead with the Mars in Aries. Saturn is always going to be this source of frustration or friction or tension, reminding you that you have to take a step back, that you have to slow down, and or that you have to work longer or harder towards this particular process or project. So that's how to understand the Mars squaring the Saturn. It's also proceeding forward with discipline. You see, Mars in Aries is not disciplined. In fact, it's quite reckless, because it's just this pure force of energy that, at its purest form it's so incredibly powerful, so incredibly powerful, so incredibly strong and courageous, and as the sun in Leo is as well. But Saturn's in this picture of this new moon. He's got a voice. He's making a pretty strong statement, and his influence is hard work, discipline, slow down, and you may have to readjust some of your thinking relative to the things that I mentioned before. Okay, so that's really all I wanted to bring forth for today, because I'm actually not feeling very well myself at the moment. So it was quite challenging to even get to this point in my day to sit down and do this. And in the midst of this, I'm trying to work on clients' charts as well. So let me just double check something here. Yes. Just one other point that's worth considering as well before I go. Mercury, which I forgot to mention, is very important with this new moon as well, because it's conjunct the new moon, obviously. So Mercury in Leo, look, it has its great points and it has its faults, like anything, I suppose. I think from a positive level, Mercury in Leo with this new moon can really be a powerful activation point for certain people that really may need the courage to speak up on things, right? And it could be in a relationship, it could be in a work situation. It just depends, right? But there might just be some situation that calls for you needing to speak up about something that you have been humming and ahhing about, or haven't felt confident or had the courage to do so. So the Mercury conjunct this new moon offers that space, if you like, that energy to activate that sense of courage to express what it is you need to express in a particular situation or to a particular person. That's one level that can be very useful. On the other hand, a moon Mercury aspect it's interesting from the point of view of public speaking, because so I guess if you are in a position where you're doing public speaking, this can be very powerful, but if you're not, then it might not be applicable to you. But I'm thinking more in the lines of leaders, certain types of leaders throughout the world who are in positions where they're publicly speaking and so forth. The moon correlates to the public. It's literally the public. It's the masses. It's the people, right? The moon basically colors the whole human race, as it were, in terms of the feel of what everyone's feeling and what everyone's kind of thinking and stuff like that. So you get a moon Mercury aspect, and the problem with it is that it's can be very influenced by the emotions, the moon. So the thoughts can become quite irrational, right? So that's just an important point to consider. However, it is also a very powerful point for activating within your own self the just being totally in tune, with other people's moods and thoughts. And as I said, publicly, that can be a very powerful combination for someone who's, trying to appeal to the masses, to the people, as it were. But just from a personal perspective, it's just important to consider that this new moon also carries the energy of Mercury in it, which can create quite a personal, subjective type of response to certain situations. So just something worth considering. Okay, I'm going to leave it there, and I will see you guys very soon. I've got loads of stuff to share. It's always just a question of juggling the time. So happy new moon, guys, and sending you all so much love and so much blessings. And thank you to all of you who have been with me for quite some time. I'm quite familiar with a lot of you, actually, your names, and I feel like I know you, even though I haven't met you. There's a whole bunch of you out there, and I really, yeah, I love all of you. I thank you so much for your support. And to any newcomers as well, thanks for coming along and checking out my material. You can always contact me for a personal reading. I offer many different types of readings. My details are in the description below the video, so you can just email me directly. So happy creative journeying over the next 4 weeks, and looking forward to seeing you guys very soon. Okay, take care. Much love. Bye.